Good afternoon. Welcome to Rapid Readout, the Benefits of Energy Star. I'm Dan Brissett. I'm the president of the Environmental and Energy Study Institute. We're going to dig right in today because we have a lot to cover, and this is a brand new briefing format for us. And the idea behind this new briefing format is basically if you can give us 30 minutes of your time, we will give you what you need to know about a particular climate, clean energy, or environmental topic in the news. From here on out, rapid readouts will happen at some frequency, and that frequency is to be determined. So we would really appreciate your feedback about topics and how often we should pull one together. Of course, our regular briefings will continue as always. In fact, we have one on Tuesday about transit and surface transportation reauthorization, and we'll be featuring Representative LaMonica McIver from New Jersey at that. Visit us online at www.eesi.org and subscribe to Climate Change Solutions, our biweekly newsletter, to keep up with everything we've got going on. Now, as we get started, we want to make the most of our time together, and we want to hear from you about what you would like to know about Energy Star. And to make sure that we're really orienting the discussion around your interests, to share your thoughts, you can join our poll. If you scanned the QR code that was on the first slide, you're already there. If you didn't, you can go to menti.com, that's menti.com, and type in the code at the top of your screen, which is a little bit too small for me to read on this screen, but it's there. Once there, you'll be able to give your input by selecting everything you're curious about, and then you can rank those items. It's all anonymous, but we can see what everyone shares on their screen. And as everyone takes a minute to share that input, we are going to jump right into today's discussion about Energy Star. Energy Star is probably best known by its distinctive blue logo, which helps consumers choose high-efficiency appliances and electronics that save them money. But Energy Star is much, much more than that, and it underpins countless federal, state, and local energy efficiency initiatives. If you are consuming energy right now, or if you've ever consumed energy at some point in the last 30 plus years, I bet you directly benefited from Energy Star. It's actually that widespread. This readout will provide background about the bipartisan origins and the heritage of Energy Star and describe all the multiple benefits it delivers. Unfortunately, a major driver of the timing of this session are some proposals, some official, some speculative, that would weaken the program or worse. A world so reliant on energy and so sensitive to energy costs without Energy Star is not one I would like to imagine, especially considering all the benefits you're going to be hearing about. Thanks to everyone who is ranking and adding input into the Mentimeter. That will help us orient our discussion. And in just a moment, you should see a new prompt come up on Mentimeter on your device. And that will be how you can submit questions throughout the presentations. Our team will be monitoring submissions and making sure that we get to as many questions as possible, plus these key topics that you're identifying in your rankings. And just so you know, there's no attribution of questions to any individuals who submit them during the question and answer portion. So we have two speakers today, both whom are awesome. Our first speaker is Ben Evans. Ben is the Federal Legislative Director at the U.S. Green Building Council. Ben, welcome to the Rapid Readout today. I'm looking forward to your presentation. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dan. Can you hear me okay?
Hear you great.
Great. Well, thanks, Dan, and to EESI for hosting this event. It's one of my favorite topics is the Energy Star program, just because it's such an incredibly successful program at EPA, and it is very timely, given, as Dan mentioned, the proposals we're seeing in the budget, and also in conversations with staff around the potential termination of the program. And it really is, very hard to understand, really hard to fathom why a federal agency or anyone at the federal government would want to terminate or eliminate this program. I think it is not hyperbole to say that this is one of the most successful public-private partnerships that the federal government has ever launched. And I'm sure there are programs in other sectors that deliver huge bang for the buck, but in terms of how much you spend and what the impact is in the energy space, it's hard to find programs that deliver more on such a shoestring budget than the Energy Star program does. And really, I think the numbers speak for themselves in terms of impact. The latest budget number we have, the funding number that we have for Energy Star at EPA is $32 million to operate and run the program. And that delivers 42 billion with a B, $42 billion in cost savings, energy cost savings in the private sector for consumers, businesses who choose to use Energy Star and certified products. That is the cost savings on their energy bills from the benefit that they get from the Energy Star program. And one other fun fact when we're talking about costs and benefits is the federal government requires, in many cases, for agencies to buy Energy Star equipment where it is available and applicable in the federal procurement process. The federal government spends $6 billion, again with a B, $6 billion on energy for its buildings, on powering its buildings, and much of that coming from the kind of heating, cooling equipment that Energy Star covers. And we have been trying to pin down this number. We haven't been able to, but I think it is almost certain that the federal government saves more than $32 million in annual costs through procuring Energy Star equipment than that $32 million is that it costs to operate the program. So from a fiscal perspective, it is just incredibly hard to understand why someone would want to get rid of this program. And then if on emissions, on climate, I mean, I know we all don't agree on the climate crisis and the solutions to the climate crisis and what the federal government's role in that should be. But the numbers for Energy Star are truly eye-popping. I mean, the program, the energy savings from the purchase and use of Energy Star rated products, buildings, homes, all of it is around 400 million metric tons per year. That is 5% of the entire U.S. Of all U.S. emissions in a given year. 5% at a cost of $32 million. Again, I would love it if someone knew of a program, and I'm sure there are regulations that don't cost much to administer, but this is not a regulation. This is a voluntary initiative, market-based initiative that that delivers that kind of impact on greenhouse gas emissions, and it really is remarkable. And I think if there are Republican offices joining today that are looking for those kinds of market-based voluntary solutions that deliver cost-effective emissions reduction. Here it is. Here's a great one. Is the Energy Star program, and would certainly love to talk about that. And even with Democratic offices, we've been Dan and I worked together at the Alliance to Save Energy years ago when the Trump administration first proposed to eliminate Energy Star. And the budget for Energy Star, even outside of the Trump administration, has continued to get squeezed. EPA's budget's getting squeezed, and Energy Star kind of getting pushed, and it has dropped annually. And we meet with a lot of Democrats, and it's frustrating because a lot of Democratic offices sort of pat it on the head and say it was this kind of a nice to have program. It's neat, but really the impact is truly incredible, and it could be so much more if the program had more resources to expand to new product categories, to expand to new building types, to promote it more. There's lots of ways that Energy Star could be improved, much less getting rid of it. And I think it is very real impact, and to lose this impact would be just really tragic. With some sort of abrupt termination, or even slow rolled termination. We can go to the next slide, please. The history of Energy Star, it was begun in 1992 under President George H.W. Bush. And if you haven't seen it yet, there's a really great op-ed in the Post yesterday by that President Bush's EPA administrator at the time, William K. Riley, who called it the Democratic government at its best. And I think this last number on this slide that you see 90% of Americans recognize the Energy Star label. That is remarkable for a government program that has no marketing budget per se, to build up that level of market awareness, and then that really reflects trust, which gets at sort of the importance of the program being at the federal government. This is a brand that is known and that is trusted, and for these types of programs, that is critical. And to build that up, some people talk about privatizing it. A brand like Energy Star, you don't just build a brand like that overnight. And I think, you see, all sorts of brands spending billions and billions of dollars on marketing to build their brands. Energy Star has done that basically through running an effective program that consumers want and that companies want to partner with. The next slide, please. Most consumers know Energy Star for consumer products. Most people know Energy Star for consumer products, but it really is a much broader program, and I think and this gets at the impact. So, products, and I know Erin's going to talk more about products in a minute, but there are Energy Star rated homes. More than 2,400 builders, developers, and manufacturers are active in the Energy Star program. We saw nearly 350,000 Energy Star homes built in 2024, which is remarkable. It spurred that it was a big increase from just a couple of years ago, spurred by the Section 45L tax credit for home builders, which is tied to the Energy Star program. Commercial buildings, more than 330,000 commercial properties around the country, representing a quarter of all the commercial real estate square footage, use Energy Star to track and measure and compare their energy performance. This is the Energy Star Portfolio Manager program, which is what the commercial buildings program is called, is foundational to real estate being able to track and improve their energy consumption. Industrial plants, manufacturers use the Energy Star program. Utilities, more than 180 utilities across the country use the Energy Star program in their rebate programs that encourage customers and give them rebates, incentivize them to buy more energy efficient products. As I mentioned, it is the basis of the 45L tax credit for new energy efficient home construction, and some parts of the 25C tax credit, which is for homeowners making efficiency improvements to their house, such as HVAC replacement and those sorts of things. So it would really be a tremendous loss and a tremendous amount of disruption if the Energy Star program were to go away. And we are fighting really hard to prevent that from happening. So Dan, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Ben. And yeah, there's your chart showing the little tiny annual budget and the great big impacts. That is to scale. That leads us to our second presenter today. Erin Hiatt is the Senior Vice President of Retail Operations for the Retail Industry Leaders Association. Erin, thank you very, very much for joining us today. I'm looking forward to your presentation. I'll turn it over to you.
Sounds great. Thank you, Dan. Can you hear me well?
Hear you great.
Very good. All right, thank you, Dan. Thank you, Ben, as well, for the really helpful overview. So as Dan mentioned, my name is Erin Hiatt. I am with you today representing RELA. So we are the Retail Industry Leaders Association. To give you an idea of who we are, these are RELA's members on the screen. So RELA represents leading retailers with an operating footprint in the US across a variety of different product categories. I am RELA's Senior Vice President of Retail Operations, so I'll lean on Ben as the politics and policy voice today. But what I get to do every day is talk to our members' teams who actually operate their retail businesses. So that includes the folks who engage with the Energy Star programs. So I'm here to spotlight some of the ways that Energy Star plays a key role helping both American families and retailers save money. On the next slide, like Ben mentioned, one of Energy Star's most notable qualities is label recognition. So if you walk into a retail store, you're there with other shoppers, you might be online thinking about everyone else who's on that e-commerce website at the same time. Again, 89% of those households are now familiar with the Energy Star label, which has grown consistently over time. Ben also mentioned the $500 billion in savings since 1992 for US businesses and households. And since that recognition has grown over time, that means that it comes to that annual savings you saw on the chart on the prior slide. So EPA estimates that for American households specifically, Energy Star products are collectively saving those families an estimated $40 billion each year. Also for those shoppers, it's good to keep in mind that Energy Star plays a key role in household energy efficiency incentive programs. So we all know that energy demands are increasing, and what that means is that consumers are benefiting from a diverse set of products that are able to do more while ultimately spending less because the products are using less energy. So that is why when national, state, and local governments may create energy efficiency programs to try to respond to some of these increased energy demands, they often offer product rebates. That is to make it affordable for Americans to purchase efficient products. So when those rebate programs are structured, they are often tied to Energy Star certification for what qualifies due to the credibility and widespread adoption of the program. So it probably comes as no surprise that if a shopper is looking to save money and by buying a more energy efficient product, they hope to do so, they are looking for the Energy Star label, retailers are wanting to help them find that product. So on the next slide, I wanted to spotlight a few considerations for the retail industry in particular. Retailers who sell appliances and electronics that carry the Energy Star label often carry thousands of Energy Star products in their stores and online. Customers know the label. If they can see it or they can sort for it online, it's helping them find what they're looking for. So retailers and manufacturers really do rely on the program label as a key way to promote these products to consumers. And it's because Energy Star is that name that consumers trust. It eliminates a lot of the need for manufacturers or retailers to consider establishing their own efficiency standards. You can imagine several competing labels could be seen as confusing for shoppers when they're used to seeing just one under Energy Star, and that could impact their ability to buy these types of items and get the type of consistent, comparable information they need to make the right choice. Another consideration behind the scenes is to maintain shoppers' trust, maintain that confidence in energy efficiency standards, and to maintain high industry engagement. It's also really crucial to lean into the portion that Ben mentioned around those public-private partnerships. So you want a reputable program that also engages industry stakeholders. Unsurprisingly, retail companies are among many industry stakeholders that currently engage with the EPA teams who lead the programs. They talk with them on a very regular basis. They provide feedback. They help continuously improve the programs based on what they're seeing with their customers, talking with their manufacturers and brands. And that includes not just retailers who sell the types of products that Energy Star currently rates, but it also includes a lot of companies who want to help more types of products be scored by Energy Star because they may be seeing that customers are looking for that information on cost savings, but it isn't currently available. So one thing to think about is if the program were to end, without adequate time and effort to educate customers, there could be questions about what current products are already for sale and labeling accuracy for ones that already have the Energy Star label on them. And just from a practical standpoint, just think about the cost and time necessary to pull and redo packaging and marketing materials for what would be millions of products across the country. It would ultimately be costly and borne by Main Street retailers, both big and small. So there are two other considerations that I wanted to touch on when it comes to how the retail industry uses Energy Star. Another is for those who report on sustainability or have sustainability goals. Products that they sell are a key element of this for many retailers. So the industry is actually built upon a lot of the public product data that goes into Energy Star certifications to help create additional tools. One that RELA actually helps produce leverages an EPA resource called the Energy Star Scope 3 Use of Sold Product Analysis Tool. So a mouthful and it gets a little wonky, but RELA, several of our retail members, and the software firm Optera created what we call the Direct Use Product Emissions Database, or DPED for short. And that launched last year for free for companies who report their emissions. So when we created DPED, it was really meant to help all kinds of companies, not just retailers, with both voluntary emissions progress, tracking, mandatory disclosures, and everything that comes in between to track progress over time. but it would not have been possible. We would not have been able to take it on without using Energy Star information and the Scope 3 tool as a foundation for all of that. And then finally, taking us back to that $500 billions in savings since 1992, Energy Star, unsurprisingly, is one of the many industries, like Ben mentioned, that helps retailers reduce their own energy costs. So on the product side themselves, obviously, we're talking about these products in consumers' homes, but if you think about retail facilities, stores and distribution centers and offices, retailers have energy management programs that really prioritize use of energy efficient equipment in their stores to make sure they're being cost conscious on their operational costs as well. So again, across all of those facilities, they may even have equipment procurement processes that prioritize the purchase of Energy Star products in order to save funds. Additionally, many retailers also leverage what Ben mentioned, Energy Star's portfolio manager program. So that is a key resource for benchmarking energy use across their facilities, figuring out if any of them may have underlying issues that need to be addressed by their facilities teams to continue to keep operating costs low and ideally be able to help them operate lean and efficient budgets, operate profitable companies, and provide the services and products that their customers are looking for. So that's what I had for folks today, and happy to pass it back over to Dan for a little Q&A.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Erin, for that great presentation. We're going to transition now to Q&A for the next 10-ish minutes, and we're not going to be able to keep up with all the questions coming in. Thanks to everyone in our online audience for submitting questions. It's still time, and we'll keep track of everything, and we'll do our best to, if you want to identify or if you want to send us an email with questions, or if you see an information gap, especially for our audience on the Hill today, if you see information gaps around Energy Star, you can send us an email. You can use probably EESI@eesi.org. That's probably the best way to send us an email. All of our email addresses are online. You can just send me an email too, but we'll do our best to do that. So there's a couple interesting trends emerging in the questions, and I think they will be great for our audience to hear about. The first one is one that you both kind of touched on, and that has to do with maybe the special benefits that we get from Energy Star being a public-private partnership. If it were all public, maybe it would be less great. If it were all private, maybe it would be less great. It seems like this is a real peanut butter and jelly situation where two good things that go better together. Ben, maybe we could hear from you first, and then Erin, if you have additional thoughts. But what is it about why is it so important that Energy Star is a public-private partnership in terms of the benefits it delivers?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to that question of trust. I think the EPA, the way that the EPA has built this program, it has done so in a way that has built trust with the market and trust with the partners. They do lots of events with their partner companies and organizations to stay in close touch, and the I think one thing with all of these types of rating, USGBC, we're the folks behind LEED. We rate things and we give people certification of sustainability, and it's always tricky about how do you make sure you're updating your certification to reflect modern technology and modern capacity. And I think the EPA has done a really good job of that, of making sure the EPA doesn't get. It's not too easy. It's not so out of reach that it's just the very, the most expensive. They hit that sweet spot of products and things that, and then the public trusts it because it has the EPA sort of seal of approval, and the companies, obviously the retailers and the manufacturers and the product makers, they trust it, and they have trusted it enough to put it on their products, which is a pretty big step. And it's hard to see, Erin mentioned what would happen if it somehow goes elsewhere. It's hard to see how you could rebuild that anytime soon in the private sector.
Erin, over to you.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, it's the trust piece. It's the fact that in this situation, the government is also seen as a very kind of objective, neutral source. They've got a lot of the testing facilities that can go into making this a very kind of clear, publicly accessible methodology and process for putting together the ratings. I think that would be one of the biggest challenges if we were looking at, an alternative program that wasn't a public-private partnership is, what does that look like? How do you help it stay funded over time, maintain credibility? And I think the key piece is comparability as well. So the use case for consumers is comparing different products they're considering buying. If you're looking at something that is not, the same methodology process across the board for all products, then the comparability just isn't there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Sometimes I'll think about, as an ecosystem, right? There are minimum efficiency standards. There are, initiatives that certain manufacturers take to, add features. And Energy Star kind of sits in this middle spot. It's voluntary. People opt in. They get the benefits of opting in, but at the same time, like, it's we wouldn't be as good, we wouldn't be as well off if we only had Energy Star, but it really fits this like important gap in between, something that is regulatory, something that is purely manufacturer driven and innovation driven.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Like, there's nothing keeping companies from building on it or adding nuances to some of the, qualities of the products that they want to spotlight. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into consumer decision making beyond just efficiency. So it's sort of a core language that they can use and then build upon it with any of their individual programs or initiatives or communication efforts as well.
We have another question, and Erin, this maybe we'll start with you if it's okay. You talked about this towards the end of your slides, and Ben was just mentioning it too, but portfolio manager. So portfolio manager, it's a benchmarking tool, but I'm curious if you could share a little bit more about why, from a perspective of, retailers that have maybe locations in multiple states, different utility service territories within a state, what are some of the benefits of having a portfolio manager being a thing rather than something that might have to be developed on kind of like a case by case basis? And if you could say a little bit more about, how a retailer might use portfolio manager to, live up to its sustainability goals.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is really about the kind of larger database that they get to tap into and leverage as the benchmarking exercise. So it's not just, we're looking at how our store in one state performs next to a store that has similar, weather conditions, size, all those attributes, but they're also getting an indication of, okay, all the other companies that also use Portfolio Manager, how does this stack up? And so the benefit of that is, again, sort of that central objective source of information. You're not risking, key data being shared too broadly with it. It's sort of being housed by this central trusted entity. And there are insights there that you're not able to get within your own portfolio. You might look great against yourself, but it may mean that you have gaps in some of the efficiency measures or tactics that you could take across the board. So some of the metadata within that as well is really helpful, where, if you have a newer store in a portfolio where a lot of them are older historic stores, you still get to tap into what is a peer base to give you an insight as to how well that facility is actually doing.
Thank you. Ben, if you have anything you'd like to add on Portfolio Manager, definitely want to make sure you get a chance.
Well, I mean, just, commercial buildings, it's where we use energy, right? It's where we use electricity in homes and buildings. We spend 90% of our time indoors. And so I just, I think people think about that and, oh, that's a nice tool, but this is a huge chunk of the electricity demand, and it allows people to get insight and intelligence on what's happening and allows them to improve and track it. And that in turn adds transparency to the market, because there's demand. There's tenant demand. There's the buildings that are high performing buildings are worth more. They can attract more interest in the market. And so it enables all of that and encourages all of that. So it's a big deal.
Well, part of our deal with these rapid readouts is that we're limiting ourselves to 30 minutes, which is a huge exercise in discipline. We're almost at our 30-minute mark. But Ben and Erin, if you have any last minute thoughts or a final thought that you'd like to share with our audience before we begin wrapping up, I'll give it to you. Maybe Ben, we'll start with you, and then we can give Erin the last word on the panel today.
Oh gosh, I hope we've conveyed that this is a really important program that has tentacles in a lot of sectors of the economy, and that if it were to go away, it would be really, really disruptive and problematic. So, uh, I hate to end on a down note, but there we are.
All I would add is just, Ben mentioned this toward the beginning. It is one of the best examples of public-private partnerships out there. And I think the success and learnings from it could apply to other programs as well. So it's something that industry is engaged in, has helped shape, but maintains that core credibility. And I think is something that we can continue to point to as a real success story.
Well, thank you, Erin, and thank you, Ben, for your presentations and for joining us today and for sharing your thoughts in response to the questions. One thing we didn't talk as much about in this session, we talked a lot about the consumer-facing side and maybe the portfolio manager side, but there's also a huge amount of technical assistance that they provide. I know in our work around some of elective pay, tax incentives, that led us to working a lot with the faith community, and there's really extensive efforts underway at Energy Star to, deliver good information about energy efficiency practices to congregations, small businesses, industrial providers. And so even though we covered a lot of ground today, Energy Star is, for a relatively inexpensive program, it is vast. And maybe we'll have to come back and do another session on Energy Star in the future. But Erin and Ben, thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to begin our down and a few final things to share with our audience. The first is what you see right now. This is another Mentimeter slide. Hopefully we'll have many more of these rapid readouts to come. And again, we're trying our best here to be timely and responsive to what congressional staff are interested in. You can use your Menti by either scanning QR code or using menti.com and using the code. If you have any ideas for future topics, this would be a great opportunity to share them. And we will take these ideas and we will incorporate them into our planning for rapid readouts, but also all of the other articles and fact sheets and issue briefs and podcasts and other resources that we put out. And I think there is an opportunity here. If you see something, rather than typing it a second time, you can amplify it and chime in that way. Couple quick plugs before we wrap up. Oh, great. Those are similar things. I'm pretty sure, I have a hunch that we may come to some of these topics in the near future. And insurance, actually, we just did a great briefing. Was it last week? Within the last 2 weeks, Senator Whitehouse joined us for a briefing about climate risk and insurance. You can always, and a great segue to this slide, all of our policymaker education resources are available at www.eesi.org. If you want to go back and rewatch this session, it will be available online. We'll also have some key takeaways, all of our congressional briefings, and we cover a lot of ground. I just mentioned insurance, but we've also done briefings this year on the Sustainable Energy in America Fact Book. We did briefings on the budget and appropriations and reconciliation processes. All of that is available online. You can read summary notes. If you don't want to watch the live cast, you can view presentation materials. We also have the biweekly newsletter, Climate Change Solutions. If you're not already a subscriber, what are we doing? You got to subscribe to Climate Change Solutions. It's really the best way to keep up with everything that we do. We also have the Climate Conversation podcast that comes out in a complimentary way to the newsletter. We put a lot of time in tracking what's happening on Capitol Hill hearings as well as legislation. Our congressional roundup is a really great resource for staff who are busy staff who are trying to keep up with everything that's happening. We have issue briefs and fact sheets, which are deeper dives into our resources. And I hope everyone will follow us on social media at EESI Online. That will just about do it for today's rapid readout. Our next slide, this is a survey. If you have any additional thoughts or comments about the programming today, additional future ideas, if you had any audio or visual problems or issues with the website, whatever, take the survey if you would. It only takes about 2 minutes or so. We read every response and we really appreciate all of that feedback. We will be back on Capitol Hill next Tuesday for a briefing called Next Stop, Sustainable Public Transit and Mobility. That's next Tuesday at 3 p.m. in the Capitol Visitor Center. We're going to wrap it up there. Thanks again to Ben and Erin for being great panelists and for helping us understand all of the different benefits of Energy Star. Hope you have a great weekend, TGIF, and we'll see you back soon. Thanks so much, everybody.